Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Service Innovation. This week we want to talk about the topic of service variability. That is, what kind of factors customers introduce into the operations of a service business and the ways how a service business can react to them. Let's get straight to it. The 5 factors are arrival variability, request variability, capability variability, effort variability, and ultimately subjective preference variability. So let's look at them one by one. Arrival variability, very straightforward, means that not all customers want to consume a service at the same time. If you think about a supermarket, for instance, the reason why lines form at the checkout counters is that the requests to shop don't come in evenly spaced over time, so that the clerks are busy continually and customers have a relatively short wait time for the checkout. Instead, they tend to come in bunched or in batches, multiple customers arriving at the same time, whereas there may be other times where no customers in the store or no customer wants to check out at the same time. So arrival variability means that the needs that a customer has arises at different times, maybe for the same customer even, over different iterations of service consumption, and certainly for different customers that consume a service. So what does that mean now for a business that is trying to deal with this type of arrival variability? Now, the 2 options that a business has are either to accommodate the variability, to serve the customers whenever their needs arise, or to try to reduce this variability by forcing the customers to accommodate to the service delivery of the business. So accommodation would mean, in the case of a supermarket, to make sure that you've got staffed checkout registers at all times, or that you use technology that enables the customer to check out when they want without any human intervention. So that is accommodation, basically saying yes. Reduction, on the other hand, means saying no to the variability or trying to reduce the variability on the customer side. That means that, for instance, you only accept customer visits based on appointments that the customers had to schedule ahead of time. Now, that works in certain circumstances, but not in others. So, for instance, in an emergency room, you cannot anticipate when a customer may have the need of medical service. So a purely accommodation system there, a classic accommodation, is probably the right way to go, because if you try to reduce and work in an appointment-based system, medical outcomes might not be optimal. And there are other situations where customer needs arise at different times, and so appointments might not be the right way to go. So arrival variability, triggered by different customer needs, can be accommodated or reduced. Accommodation means more staff or more technology. Reduction means make an appointment, only consume the service when it's being offered. The second type of variability is request variability. Not every customer wants to consume the service the same way or would like to have variations in the service delivery. Very simple example, just look at how people order in a restaurant. Some people want their dressing on the side, they want wheat toast instead of whole wheat, and they may want certain ingredients substituted in their dishes. Now, some restaurants are very accommodating that way. They allow for these types of substitutions. Other restaurants are very strict and say no substitutions allowed. So request variability means the business is faced with variations that the customers expect from their services. If they accommodate this type of variability, the result would be that you have to have very skilled personnel to deal with these variations. On the other hand, reduction means that there's a very fixed set of items that the customer can procure from you, a fixed set of services that they can get, and so they either take it or leave it. So that's the second kind, request variability. The third kind of variability is capability variability. Now, as we know, customers participate in the service delivery. They become part of the operating system of a service company. Capability variability means that some customers are very skilled at contributing to the service delivery, while other customers may not have the experience, the physical skills, or the understanding of what's required of them to make for a seamless service delivery. Again, a company can decide to accommodate, say, yes, I will accommodate customers of various skill levels, or they reduce and they say, no, you have to have a certain skill to participate in the service. So an example would be requiring a license or requiring training before a customer may consume a particular service, as opposed to a business where staff members are on hand to fill in these capability gaps, to basically take the customer by the hand and explain to them how things work. So those are two kinds of variability. Accommodation versus reduction for capabilities. Yeah, does the customer need hand-holding, or does the service consumption come easy to them? The fourth kind of service variability is effort variability. So even in a situation when the customer knows what they need to do, their request fits what the company is willing to offer, and their arrival meshes with the time when services are available, effort variability means that not everybody wants to contribute to the same extent. So you have a situation where a customer might decide to bus their own table in a self-service restaurant, and at other times customers might just leave their dirty dishes or their leftovers on the table. Same thing in the supermarket. Some customers may decide to return the shopping cart to the corral in the parking lot, and others just leave the shopping cart wherever they have parked. And maybe more on the white-collar side of service, think about doing your taxes. If you're working with a tax accountant, some people might put effort in and provide their accountant with an Excel spreadsheet of the individual expenditures and income statements and give them very well organized tax files. And other people might just hand over a shoebox with receipts. So that's the difference in terms of effort variability. So again, a company may decide to accommodate that or reduce this effort variability. So reducing the effort variability would mean that you use rewards and penalties, instrumental controls, as we learned last week, to make sure that customers do the right thing. Whereas accommodation of effort variability means that you have staff on hand that can buffer. So in other words, the tax accountant may have an intern or a temp that scans the receipts from the shoebox, so that the tax accountant then has a somewhat homogeneous set of files to work with. So that is effort variability. Finally, the fifth kind of variability that a business might deal with is subjective preference. So customers have different expectations of service delivery, and they may have a different understanding of what constitutes a good service versus a bad service. So sometimes you have very attentive waiters in a restaurant, introduce themselves by first name, check in on the guests frequently, and some guests might appreciate that personal touch, and other guests might feel that that is kind of overbearing, and they would prefer if the wait staff just stood back a little bit. So again, companies can accommodate subjective preference variability, or they can try to reduce that. So if they try to reduce it, you basically have to convince your customers that the way you provide your service is a good way to provide your service, that the customers should not have individual preferences in this space. Accommodation, on the other hand, have people on hand that can sense what the customer wants and that can adjust to it. So these are 5 kinds of variability that customers might introduce into a service business: arrival variability, request variability, capability variability, effort variability, and subjective preference. So having customers as part of your operation exposes you to these kinds of variability. As a business, you can decide to say, yes, I will accommodate, or you can decide to say, no, I will reduce this variability. Now, accommodating variability is generally regarded as expensive. Reduction of variability is generally regarded as a cost-saving measure. Now, there are, of course, compromises. So we talk about classic accommodation and classic reduction. But technology gives us an opportunity to accommodate some kinds of variability at a lower cost. So that could, for instance, mean that if you need additional staff, but the staff does not need to be on site, that you outsource, that you hire staff in a different location to supplement your staffing levels, for instance, for arrival variability. It could also mean that you automate tasks or that you provide self-service options for customers to give them options to receive the service in the format that they would like. Now, on the other hand, if we're thinking about reduction typically means that customers' expectations are reduced. You can't come anytime you want, you can't get everything you want, you can't have your specific nuance of the service that you might prefer. You have to fit into the mold. That would be classic reduction. And uncompromised reduction means that we're trying to reduce the variability while still delivering a highly desirable and to some extent customized product that meets the customer expectations. And that in many cases means that I don't serve every customer that is potential for my business. I pick my customers, I select my customers based on their capabilities, based on the effort that they're trying to put in, and I'm trying to find a much better match between what I'm willing to provide as a service provider and what the customers are willing to contribute. Now, that's a fine art. So, for this week, I have posted 2 assignments for you. They're actually 2 quizzes. What I'm asking you to do, on the one hand, is visit a business where you're a frequent customer, a service business, and write down the service experience. There's a structured questionnaire under quizzes. Take some photos if you like. It's always easier to then show in class what your experiences were. So you do that once for a business where you're a frequent customer, and then on the other hand, you do it for a business that you've never ever attended before, where you are an absolutely new customer. So contrasting these two is going to help us understand what this variability, reduction, and accommodation can look like in practice. So that's your assignment for this week. The other reading for this week is an article by Francis Fry from 2009 that spells out in detail the things that I explained in this video. What are the different kinds of variability and how do businesses try to accommodate or reduce them? So that article, together with this video, together with the 2 quizzes, hopefully will make for a nice discussion when I come back the week after next. Hope you have a great week. Enjoy, and I hope you have fun doing this exercise. It certainly opened my eyes when I did it for the first time. Bye-bye.